Welcome back. If you're a Democrat, you might say to yourself, now he tells us. And if you're a Republican, you might say to yourself, wouldn't matter anyway. What am I talking about? Well, Minnesota Governor, former vice presidential nominee Tim Walz, is unburdening himself about what he thinks Democrats could have done and should have done better in 2024. He told Politico, quote, this is a long one, so pay attention. In football parlance, we were in a prevent defense, Walz said, to not lose when we never had anything to lose because I don't think we were ever ahead, unquote. Joining us now to discuss and diagram, Joel Payne and Michael LaRosa. Joel is a CBS News political contributor, Michael, and Democratic strategist. Michael served as press secretary for First Lady Joe Biden. Michael, I want to ask you about that, Walz's characterization, and also the conversation going on here in Washington about books that are going to come out and allegations that are going to be made that the White House and the re-election campaign buried the infirmities of President Biden to its detriment and to the country's detriment.
Yeah, look, I wasn't there for the last 2 years. In the last 2 years, I did think that they should start taking the polling that showed a lack of support for the president in his own party very seriously.
The re-election and the White House.
The re-election bid, and I did not think that by denying the polling, denying the data, denying the journalism, they were also denying how the public felt about the president's age and how severe of an issue it was. And I think it's demonstrated by Senator Jack Reed, who, as you know, doesn't make noise.
No.
When he requested that the president take two mental acuity tests and share the results. I mean, this is a guy who doesn't like drama. He's known the president for 30 years. And by that point, it was too late, and all the benefit of the doubt for the president and his campaign was lost.
Did you ever witness anything that troubled you about the president's abilities?
I worked for them, for the First Lady, in the traveling bubble, as it's called, for 3 years, the campaign and the first 2 years at the White House. And I've always been consistent. That has never been my experience. Whether they misread their mandate in 2022 after the midterms is another story. And that's up to their, that's a call for the strategists, and they should take responsibility for what they did and didn't see in the data at the time.
Quickly, Tim Walz says they were never ahead and they should have played more aggressively.
Well, he's absolutely right. And the part about the Bidens and Tim Walz, it's all connected. We need to start having these uncomfortable conversations early and honestly, because this is why we're in the position we are in, because we didn't have them early enough. Governor Walz is exactly right. I mean, this is a guy right out of central casting. He was a vet. He was a teacher. He was a coach, a Midwestern governor. He campaigned and auditioned for the job because he could communicate and relate to people through the prism of television. And they did the opposite. They took their asset and they, I don't know, muzzled and locked it up and chained it up into a basement. We never saw them again. And so I don't know why. It's mysterious and baffling to me why they decided to not use their asset strengths to their advantage. And
turned the governor into a cautious, I agree with Vice Presidential nominee Vance in the debate.
Yeah, you started with that football metaphor that the governor used. In the football parlance right now, Democratic Party is a team that just had a really bad year with high expectations and is rebuilding. And the things that you're seeing right now, the conversation we're having, all the talk in all the favorite newspapers that we trust is going to be about what went wrong. They're fair. The critiques are fair. I have said to you, I've said to our colleague John Dickerson and others, I thought Joe Biden's age would not be an impediment for him so long as it did not affect his ability to do the job. I was wrong about that. I think the American people made a different judgment than I did and that a lot of strategists did. I think combined with the fact that the Democratic Party is maybe losing the thread on the conversation that's happening outside of D.C. with the rest of the country, which, by the way, I think that it's good and it's useful that the party has rebounded and has started to understand those shortcomings. I think that's where we are right now.
To Michael's point, it's always been something I've observed that whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, if you ignore bad news, you are taking a tremendous risk, especially if that bad news keeps showing up in your data.
Yeah, especially also if bad news plays into preconceived notions. I worked for John Edwards, right? And there was the whole thing about him being the wealthy trial lawyer that you can't trust. And then guess what happens? He goes and has an affair on his cancer-stricken wife. and lies about it, right? And it's not just that he did the bad thing; it's that he did the bad thing that people were already predisposed to thinking
Or
he was capable
being
of doing.
suspicious about.
And to the point about Biden, it's not just that he showed his wares in that debate and that he clearly slowed down publicly. It's that it played into a narrative about a country losing faith in their leader, losing faith in his ability to be a dynamic spokesperson for what he believed in. And I think, unfortunately, Democrats weren't able to break the cycle. Kamala Harris was a really good candidate who had an opportunity to do that. She couldn't break away from the Biden-Harris legacy enough in a quick amount of time.
But you know, Major, we also have to be realistic and pragmatic, but also, honest that we had a problem at the top of the ticket. But in 6 out of the 7 swing states, they chose Democrats right after that. In Arizona, Nevada.
I mean, in the Senate races.
Minnesota, the Senate races, the governor's race in North Carolina. If you go down, if you look at the North Carolina ballot of statewide officials down to the superintendent, Democrats won all of those races. So we had a problem at the top of the ticket, but we fared very well with women candidates and Latino candidates at the top.
Let's go to something that is often perceived about the fortress family, Biden.
Yes.
That it's very hard to penetrate, and it is kind of insular, and it talks to itself in reassuring ways. Indifferent, probably at its peril to certain political signals that it should have absorbed. True?
Yeah, I'd say that's true.
By the way, not uncommon for any politician, right? If you,
But
you're that
especially
close,
so. It feels, and there is a perception that it's especially so
Well, in this
with
case,
fortress Biden family.
In this case, it did. Well, the family, first of all, it is Jill,
Led by Jill.
It is Jill Biden's job as his spouse, not as his political advisor, to love and support and encourage him to keep going. There's a lot of also PTSD from 1987 where they were forced out before. And that left a lot of scars. He didn't run for president for 20 years after that. But as the spouse, as his children, his child and grandchildren, it's their job to encourage him. It is his inner circle's job, the political advisors, to give him the bad news. And again, going back to the Jack Reed story, according to the Washington Post reporting, he was unaware of what Senator Reed had said in the meeting with senators, and Schumer was shocked that he was shocked. And I think that exemplified the problem we had.
Color
The
me
disconnect.
unsurprised that a politician who is the president, who's been trying to be president for 50 years, the inertia of holding on to power, that's as old as day in politics. And so that's not very surprising to me.
Joel Payne, Michael LaRosa. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much.